Good morning, Professor. Good morning, class. It's my fourth speech, and this speech will be on which president was good for our country and why. I chose James Polk. James Polk is the 11th president of the United States from 1845 to 1849. He was born on November 2nd, 1795. He was quite literally born in a log cabin in the woods of Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. A little bit of a mouthful. So he's the oldest kid of 10 kids. He moved to Tennessee with his family when he was 10 years old, which was a 500-mile wagon ride to their home where they resided in Tennessee. At the age of 18, he became proficient in English, Greek, and Latin, proficient in reading and writing, all three of those languages. He graduated from the University of North Carolina with first honors in mathematics and classics. After graduating, he became a lawyer with growing interest in politics. He was mentored by one of our founding fathers, Andrew Jackson, followed in his footsteps, and quickly grew in his career in political campaign of the United States. So to begin his career in the campaign of politicians, in 1823 he became a representative for Congress for the state of Tennessee. He did extremely well in that role. He vastly improved the state and proceeded to grow in his political campaign. In 1835, he became the Speaker of the House. He also did very well in that position. He increased the responsibilities and the expectancy of that position tremendously, and he did one term, and he went and became the governor of Tennessee after that. So in 1839, he was the governor of Tennessee. He did one term, and with the assistance of his mentor, Andrew Jackson, he decided to run for presidency. In 1844, he was the first dark horse candidate for the Democratic Party. You might ask yourself, what does that mean? What does the dark horse mean? Dark horse means that he was not expected to win by his own party or the opposing party. Literally nobody thought President James Polk would win the candidacy. But he did. He did, and when he did win, he was the youngest president in American history up to that point. One of the first things he did when he took office is he wanted to annex the country of Texas to include it into the United States. When he did connect Texas join the United States, it was a country at that time. Yes, a country, not just a state. And then he convinced them they became the 28th state in December 29th, 1845. When he took office, he made 4 promises to the people of the United States. The first, that he was only going to serve one term. In that term, he would cut tariffs, recreate the U.S. Treasury, add some or all of the Oregon Territory to the U.S., and claim California and New Mexico, which was currently Mexico at that time. So to create those 4 promises in one campaign was absurd. He was laughed at, he was mocked, he was ridiculed, he was told there's no way he's going to accomplish all of those in his campaign. But yet he persisted, and he did actually accomplish all 4 of those. But let's go back and touch on those. So the first one was cut tariffs. So he signed the Walker Tariff Act in 1864 that cut tariffs down to 25%. 25% is one of the lowest tariffs in American history still to this day. In 1844, him and Congress went and brought back the independent treasury. The federal government took care of the money instead of having privately owned or state-owned banks taking care of their money, and it laid the groundwork for the Federal Reserve System today, which we currently have. His independent treasury lasted 67 years until it was replaced by the Federal Reserve System. So those 2 of his promises, boom, done, completed, all within one term. Third promise, add an Oregon Territory. So in June 15th, 1846, he added the Oregon Territory. Him and the British went back and forth negotiating treaties about where they wanted to cut the line. They settled right in the middle of the 49th parallel, and currently that includes, modern day today, is Oregon, Idaho, and Washington is all included in those 49th parallels. So he secured those 3 modern states for us back in 1846. The second one was California and New Mexico, part of his expansion. California and New Mexico did not prove as easy. So California and Mexico, Polk decided he's going to send an envoy down to Mexico City, offer them $20 million and settlements for damage claims over the American people. His envoy was actually never received because, as you can imagine, any Mexican president who's going to give up over 1/3 of his country to a foreign country is probably not going to be elected again. So since that was not received, Polk got his feelings hurt and decided, well, I'm going to send down troops down to the border dispute of Texas and Mexico. So Texas believed its border ended here, Mexico believed its border ended here. All of this was disputed territory. In that disputed territory, Polk sent down General Zach Taylor to the Rio Grande with an armed regiment to march around. They were under orders not to shoot the Mexicans, they were under orders not to cause a fight, but to fight back if necessary. While they were marching around, they were spotted by Mexican troops. He took it as an act of war and fired upon the American soldiers. When Congress found out that their soldiers had been fired on disputed American soil, they had no choice but to declare war, starting the Mexican-American War. During that war, they won many victories, ultimately occupying Mexico City. And in 1848, Polk said, I don't want your city, all I want is my original claim of California and New Mexico. So they signed an additional agreement for $15 million, an American assumption of the damage claims during the war, and America got California and New Mexico territories, and Mexico lost 1/3 of their landmass of their country. So let's recap this up a little bit. So James Polk, the 11th President of the United States, he kept every single campaign promise he made, which is unheard of at this current time, and has never happened again since. He lowered tariffs 25%, he rebuilt and established U.S. Treasury, which is now the modern-day Federal Reserve, he claimed California and New Mexico territories from Mexico, and he claimed Oregon territories from the British. So let's check this out. So all those territories. So he is single-handedly responsible in one term for claiming Oregon, Idaho, Washington, Texas, California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico. That's 10 states. James Polk claimed 10 modern-day states that we still have in the United States. Now, why does nobody know about this president? That's a really good question. Let me ask somebody in the audience. Excuse me, ma'am. You ever heard of James Polk before I gave this speech today?
No, I have not.
Never heard of him, not one time.
Not one time.
Okay, let me ask you another question. Where do you currently live? What state?
California.
Okay, so you live in California, and you've never heard of the man responsible for California being part of the U.S.?
Not one time.
Not one time. That's crazy. Yeah, neither have I. I grew up in California. Growing up in California, we never learned the history of James Polk. We were never taught about James Polk. And I've never even heard the name James Polk until I researched it on my own. It's a pretty crazy thought. Let me leave you with this. This is a quote from James Polk. No president who performs his duty faithfully and conscientiously can have any leisure. I prefer to supervise the whole operations of the government myself rather than entrust the public business to subordinates. And this makes my duties very great. So let me ask you this. Imagine today if we had a president that was running for nomination here in the next couple months, who kept every single campaign promise he's made, who expanded the U.S., who brought people together and lowered taxes and helped the economy of the U.S. I'm pretty sure that's what we're all praying for right now. All right, thank you for your time. I hope you learned something about James Polk, and I'll see you next time.